Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the brilliant podcast. It is I, Jamie, and as always, joined by Emma. There we go, I got it right. There we go.
You did what I did
Hello.
last time. Where looks like you forget the name.
I was like lifting it up a little bit. It's going, is it that way? Yes, it is. There you go.
Yay!
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm doing good. The quick thing was, obviously, I've been away for the past few weeks. So I haven't had a chance to watch anything new. But briefly, before we do continue with the podcast, you saying that you're watching The Cure for Wellness.
Yes, I did watch that. That was It's not new, is it? Really, it's new to me.
Yes.
So that is. I find myself so strapped for time, and it was on Netflix, even though I have it on DVD and it's still in its cellophane wrap. Yeah, it's pristine in the box. There you go, in the IKEA box.
I get what you mean, because like when I was moving house into the one that I'm in now last February, I decided to take every single cellophane wrapper off every DVD and Blu-ray that I own whilst I moved house. Because it was fun.
Why?
Because I had to alphabetize everything, make sure obviously when I move they all go into the right place. And I was like, might as well just what I don't even know what the right word is now. Strip them, like naked them. I don't know what it is. Like just take off the cellophane and
Unwrapped.
Unwrap. There's the word. Unwrap them all. And now they're all. I mean, I've bought new ones since that. I probably haven't. But yes.
I mean, that must have taken you some time.
But when I was packing them all away, you could do it at the same time, couldn't you? It's just like, I've got one, let's unwrap it, there you go. And then I just had a massive pile of just plastic wrappers and stickers and stuff. Because I don't just not unpack them. I still have the stickers on them. And because I worked at HMV for so long, they've got the HMV customer order number on there and my name on there and stuff. It's great. Nice looking back. I've got stickers downstairs on some DVDs. I've got Blockbuster, $7.90 for a film, free for 15, 20 quid. I'm like,
yeah, stickers. I think this is the thing with like, I feel people who collect books have the same problem of when they put stickers on like books and things like that. It's the same things for DVDs, especially when you've got like a kind of like luster cardboard cover. And you don't want to scratch it and indent it trying to get it off, but also at the same time, I don't want a massive like 50p CEX sticker on my DVD cover. But also, I love how. I was just going to say as well, really quickly, is that like I love how you were like, well, I had to alphabetize them, and I was like, well, obviously, everyone else listening to this is probably like, what? No, you don't need to alphabetize your DVDs.
Some people that I follow on Instagram, I'm not going to name any names. They've got like collections out there, and it's just categorized but not alphabetized.
Oh.
Like you'll have like a selection of horror films, selection of comedies. Some just throw them in there randomly. Like, why? Why are you doing this?
Oh no, they've got to have some sort. No, mine's all split out by theme. They're like definitely alpha. Well, they were. I've since had more, so everything was kind of just shoved in a place where it fit. But I do need to go through it again. My long suffering friend Eloise had to go through, and we counted out that I had like over 200 DVDs, which is obviously nowhere near in compared to what you have. But we literally gutted them all out and counted them all, and wrote down all of the all the names.
Well, you laugh at that. What I wanted to do originally, I remember back in the day, back in my day, when I was a kid, in my granddad's house, he used to have a book of every single film he had on VHS, and he used to know the VHSs so you could find the films. Because I always used to watch Back to the Future all the time, obviously, because it's the greatest film ever made. And everything was numbered, and sometimes there'd be two films on one tape, so it'd be like blah blah, and then each VHS case was numbered. So I was like, I'm going to do the 21st century version of this. And I went back to my year 8 ICT days, and I was like, Microsoft Access. Do you remember Microsoft Access? No, this is how old it is. There you go. So basically, what you had to do on Microsoft Access is you could type loads of stuff in. You had to do like a workbook. So I was going to do it with my DVD. So I type in every film that I own on Microsoft Access, every title. Then you could put something like director, genre, starring. But then I was like, well, starring's going to be too much because there's that many different actors in them. Because I was like, I'm going to do that. So I started doing it. And then you could come to something like Ocean's 11. It's like, who do I put? Brad Pitt, George Clooney, Julie Roberts. It's like there's about 5 different. And then you go like, This Is the End or something. You got something that's got an all-star list of people. You're like, I don't know who to put on there. So maybe I'll go back to it one day and just do the title of the film, the genre, the director, maybe. But then when you get actor, you could have all of like Tom Cruise and stuff. Like obviously I have a Tom Cruise film on there because I own a Cruise film.
Well, rather than actor, why don't you do like personal like 5 like star review? Because I'm guessing you've seen or at least know like are going to watch all the DVDs that you've got.
Maybe. Who knows? Some of them just looked really nice, so I bought them.
That sounds like the absolute like trigger of a hoarder sort of said to like, well, it looked nice, I just got it.
Well, the worst part is with obviously I worked at H&B like that, and
Yep.
they used to do like a Christmas deal thing where you just got loads of stuff in for really cheap, like $1.99 to $2.99. And I'm a sucker for steelbooks. You give me a steelbook at $2.99 and it looks nice, I'm gonna buy it. So I've got Juno on steelbook. Not the best film, but it looks nice. I've got Juno on steelbook
Excuse
for like
me.
£2.
That I will not take Juno slander. Thank you very much in this
I never said it.
podcast.
I never said it was awful. I'm just saying. And there was just like random ones that I just bought. I got the full Monty for like £2-3 as well. Again,
Nobody needs to own the full Monty because it's on Channel 4 like every other week.
But they can own it on steelbook.
Well, this is the thing as well. I guess we're slightly off topic, but with DVD is now becoming obsolete. What are you going to do with your collection? I went into H&V Derby to go and find Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Coppola. I can't say his last name, but the Francis Ford version.
Coppola.
Yeah, Coppola. That's it. The Francis Ford Coppola version discontinued. They told me. Devastated. So
Just
I've had
on
to buy
DVD.
it on Amazon for the
Pretty sure
time.
it's not
Well, yeah,
Blu-ray.
apparently so. Yeah, but I only collect DVD. I don't have Blu-rays. I'm not starting a Blu-ray collection just for that one film.
Everything looks so much
already.
better than Blu-ray. I mean, now you got 4K as well, but there you go.
Well, he said this. He was like, "We have it in 4K or Blu-ray." The person serving me, and then I was like, "DVD." And he was like, "No, no DVD. It's discontinued." And I was like, "Well, I'm not starting a Blu-ray collection now. Too late. I'm in too deep."
That's the thing that I know. I own Top Gun on VHS,
Obviously.
DVD, Blu-ray, 3D, and 4K.
That's just well. I mean, we're biased on each other's sides because obviously you're biased to the fact that it's like one of your all-time best films, and Tom Cruise. You're a big Tom Cruise actor. Myself, as a not Tom Cruise fan and also not really into planes and things like that, could not think like what. That's a lot of money for one film.
But I've met him, so it's okay.
I know you have met him.
What a time to be alive. I mean, we could talk about Tom Cruise. Let's just talk about Interview with the Vampire. There you go. Then we could talk
Oh, there
Holiday.
we go. We could do a review. We could do a movie review on Interview if you want.
Have you watched it?
Yeah.
Some point maybe. Because I've got to decide what film we're doing next, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I've got some ideas, but
yeah,
at the end of this episode, we'll have a chit chat. But I have some ideas.
Okay. But I mean, let's get into this week's episode then, because I know we've been chatting for nearly 10 minutes about random crap and DVD collections. So let's talk about cheerleaders, jocks, nerds, and virgins. I love one of them. Which one do you love?
Out of the options given,
Yes.
It's got to be the nerd every time. They're usually the ones that come through, aren't they? I think as well, in the more like the lines tend to blur a bit more now in a modern sense of who falls into these demographics. But back in the day, the nerd was usually the one that ends up actually coming through and getting the girl, unless they are a hybrid of nerd and also virgin. Then that's a whole different genre there going on there. But that's my choice. What about you? What's your choice?
I love the cheerleaders. Save the
Of
cheerleader,
course you
save the
do.
world. No, yeah, I think when you talk cheerleaders are usually like the really popular girls, the bitches that usually just have the best deaths, don't they? Usually in any film, they finally
Yeah.
get what comes to them. They get like a gruesome death where the head just gets impaled on like a coat hanger or whatever or something like that. Don't know.
Coanger.
Also, it's not a coat hanger. It's the thing that you have on the wall and stuff. Has that actually been in the film? I'm sure it has. A meat hook.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. No. Coat hanger. No, but the eye into a piece of wood in that. I forget which. It's a zombie film. I forget which one, but it's an old one.
In like Texas Chainsaw, don't you hang them on a meat hook?
Yeah, but she's not the cheerleader out of
No, yeah,
them
no,
one,
I'm
is
just saying
she?
that they just hang them on a meat hook.
She's the astral. Tell me your star sign. I'll tell you how your week's gonna go, girl.
The kooky character.
The kooky character, yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's a trope that doesn't just go over to horror films. I think you recently put on a post yesterday or today about the 1980s classic Breakfast Club. It's a trope that's
Yes.
within all of them as well. You have a cheerleader, a jock, a nerd, and a virgin as well. So it's not something that's just synonymous with horror. I think it's just one that the horror movies took in and decided to adapt it to how they made their teen movies, especially within the 80s and definitely in the 90s when they came out with Scream, and I know he did last summer, and the resurgence of teen horror movies. I haven't watched a lot of teen horror films from recent years. I know we were talking earlier, so we had some comments on Instagram and Facebook about the Cabin in the Woods and stuff. I haven't seen that film, so you're going to have to speak a little bit more about that.
I
Are you
haven't seen
surprised I haven't seen
it? Well, I think we found what our next one is, so I don't. Oh, I don't know. I don't want to talk about
It's
it too
my choice.
much.
It's my choice. I know the premise of it, but obviously I'm not going to spoil it for people that haven't watched it. I kind of know what happens in it.
As someone
And
who,
it's got the worst Hemsworth brother in it, right?
it's got the what?
The worst
The
Hemsworth brother in it, right? One of the Hemsworths is in it. I
no,
don't know which one. Is it
it's
Chris?
got the mate. Yeah, it's got
It's got
Chris.
Thor. That's fine then.
Yeah, it's not got not Miley Cyrus's ex. No, not him. The other one,
Okay.
Thor.
I prefer
But
Luke.
that's. Oh, I forget. I forget that there's Luke. Oh God. But yeah. Anyway, besides the point. What I was going to say is someone who has studied, you know, yourself. You've studied script writing things like that. I'm very surprised that you've not really been into watching Cabin in the Woods yet. I'll tell you. To be fair, to be granted with Cabin in the Woods, I remember I saw it for ages and I was like, that really doesn't look like something I'd want to watch. And then I actually sat and watched it and I was like, oh, well, I'll be damned. Well,
Abby.
I'll be damned. I really enjoyed it. But yes, I'll talk about that when we get round to it.
It's one of those that's kind of been like, should I watch it? Maybe. Don't know. But maybe I'll watch it in 3, 4, 5, 7. I don't even know. So many weeks' time. Whenever you decide that, I'll probably watch it next time. Is that 6 weeks? Probably.
Something like that.
6 weeks. Maybe that's what it is. I mean, you're getting an exclusive here. In 6 weeks' time, we're gonna watch Cabin in the Woods. Don't know
Oh
what
well,
we're gonna watch in
maybe it might not be. Don't be selling a dream to people that might not come true.
Okay. But yeah, Cabin in the Woods. Like, you won't talk about it so much then because what I saw that you were talking about, you're saying it kind of doesn't lend itself to this trope.
So it does, but it's a very it leads you down a path that you think you know what's gonna go on, and you're like, "Oh, we've seen this time and time again," and then it's not what you think it is, and then yeah, it's good. It's a good pay. It comes around pretty quickly, like the difference, and it's a nice change. It's a nice pace change as well for the trope, because I think the reason the trope is so popular is because it is, especially further back in time, maybe not so much now. I'd hope not so much now. That segregation of being a cheerleader, a jock, a nerd, like a virgin or like nerdy girl, for example, because it's never it's well, again, back in the day, it's never the boys that are the virgins. It's always the girls, and they always end up being the final girl. But it seems like school life was quite segregated like that, especially in like American schools, which
Mhm.
isn't so much now. Um, so yeah, it's kind of like a more modern twist on that sort of genre, essentially.
Okay, interesting. But I was gonna say, I think the reason of why this trope always works is, to quote a famous virgin himself, there's a formula, a very simple formula to horror movies. And obviously you have this formula, it just works, doesn't it? And I think when horror was so dead in the water after sequel, say, obviously 1978 came with Halloween, 1980 Friday the 13th, and then the 80s was just filled with sequel after sequel after sequel. They were releasing like Nightmare on Elm Street every year. After 1984, you had about 7 Halloween films that year, 3 Chucky films, you had 6 Nightmare on Elm Street films, another 5, 7 Halloween films as well.
Mhm.
So basically, horror was dead, and I don't think a lot of these older slasher movies followed these tropes to a degree as much. Like they were basically, I'm just gonna. You kind of rooting for the killer in these ones. You're just like, yeah, just kill someone. I've just come to see Freddy kill someone. Don't care. So there wasn't really a lot of these tropes, and then it wasn't until Scream in 1996 it reinvented the horror movie. And when Scream came out in 1996, it just changed everything completely, because horror, like I said, was reinvented. It just had, what's the word I'm looking for here? When you look at the genre cycle, if I'm going all technical now, with the genre cycle with Christoph Metz. Christoph Metz had his genre cycle where you would have the formula of a horror movie, where this is like the standard horror movie. Then you kind of have a twist in that horror genre, and then you'll have the deconstructing of it, and then the parody of horror, and that's how it formulated at the time. And Scream was more of a parody on the horror genre because it was full aware of itself. It was, what's the word, postmodern. Like I said, it was self-actualization of what a horror movie is. It was referring to other horror movies, which again not a lot of horror movies ever did before. It was very self-aware, and it brought these tropes and everything to the audience and spoke to the audience of this is how you survive a horror movie. I'm sure everybody has seen Scream or Scream 2 or Scream 3 by now, so I'm not going to spoil anything, but it does kind of divert from the tropes a little bit and plays with them, because throughout the whole film, Sydney was a virgin, and they always say the virgin always survives. You're not allowed to have sex or you're gonna die. And then obviously Sydney decides to give herself away, and then doesn't die. She still survives. But then, would you count Randy as a virgin? I don't know. Would you say he is? Kind of hard. It's never really said, but it's kind of
No, I
maybe.
guess he kind of falls into the nerd category, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which again, like I said, they probably have a better survival rate than they do of the cheerleaders and jocks, mainly because they end up being the ones that pull through for the virgin or final girl in the end. If the final girl can't do all of it on her own.
Yeah, and obviously Randy does survive at the end of Scream, but unfortunately doesn't make it throughout the whole of the Scream saga. I mean, he's in 3 films, isn't he? Give him
Hmm.
that. So, when you think of this trope, I've already mentioned Scream, but what's the first film that comes to your head?
So,
Scooby.
well, this is the thing. Scooby Doo actually was like a really random. Like, I put a post on Instagram the other day where it was basically Scooby Doo and Scream, because I think Scooby Doo, especially in the live action films, in the first one, it comes around. Obviously, they've broken up and they come back again, and Daphne basically says that she's sick of being the damsel in distress, the cheerleader character. So she ends up like going and taking like black belt in like karate lessons, and she ends up saving herself. Even though, still, regardless, she still gets into the problems because that's just the character anyway. She can get herself out of them, and I think that's a nice like sort of spin on that's very self aware. And then you've got Fred. He's just a himbo. He is still maybe not quite a jock, but him and Daphne are the power couple like that. And then again, you've got the additional, probably not necessarily the virgin, but you've got a nerd and a stoner. I guess a stoner is kind of like a reoccurring sort of trope as well in these teenage groups. But no, the first thing that comes to my mind, and it's literally just because it's like a sort of like, it's quite recent they've come around, but the babysitter films, where obviously we've got blood rituals, but everyone's after their own thing. We have literally got a cheerleader, a jock, a virgin, and then obviously like the nerd as well. Also, probably kind of falls into the virgin category there as well. But yeah, those films kind of follow those that trope as well. But also, again, like Scream takes the mick out of it and sort of plays on it as well. But that's the only thing. That was the first thing that came to my head on that one. And then I guess other than that, if we're talking about older films, then I Know What You Did Last Summer
Yeah.
series. It really plays on that. Sarah Michelle Gellar obviously just kind of falls into these categories quite often.
She only really did. I know she had a cameo in Screen too, but she only did that, and I know it did last summer. And then did she do The Grudge? That was it, really, wasn't it, for horror?
Well, yeah, but then also you have to think about the other characters that she gets cast as. Daphne is a popular girl. In theory, her character in Cruel Intentions is the popular girl. The bitch. And then you've got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where not only is she popular and a cheerleader, but she is also the final girl, where she kind of like just sort of like breaks that trope of the virgin final girl and brings it into being the cheerleader and quite a strong
Bitch.
personality. Yeah, it's like well, basically, yeah. She's got one of those faces, though, hasn't she? She can kind of go into that category. You
Mm.
don't really see her as like a shrinking wallflower as you might do Sissy Sassbeck. Sorry, murdered the last name there. Spacek there from
Carrie.
Carrie. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's the thing. Looking at really early on when you say Carrie there, because again, this kind of plays. I know it's a Stephen King adaptation, but it's kind of weird because how can you just talk about this trope with Carrie? Because again, you have John Travolta, Jock. You've got the cheerleader, which is his girlfriend. I can't remember her name. I want to say Nancy, but I could be completely wrong. Um, and then like Sissy Spacek is obviously the virgin nerd, but also kind of the hero and villain at the same time.
mm. And it's we can easily pick out these tropes, but then when you're actually watching the film, I feel like we as viewers appreciate the film more if it breaks that general stereotypical, you know, thing of the sort of the nerdy girl, but then she ends up becoming our protagonist slash antagonist at the same time. It's a good for her film, isn't it? That isn't it, Carrie? Good for her.
Yeah, well, Carrie, 1978, 1980, 66. Jesus, all right.
I was gonna
1976.
say, you're the one with the dates and directors, and obviously better at saying people's names than I am.
Brian De Palma as well, I believe. Who also did Mission Impossible. There you go. He also
We got to
did
try. We need to do a Tom Cruise count because you have to any reference to Tom Cruise. There must be at least one every episode so far.
As There Should Be. Only podcast that doesn't. Is it worth listening to?
Oh, I mean,
I mean, probably.
leave us a comment when you watch this. Tell us. the people stopping viewership
You
from this
want
point
more
onward.
Tom Cruise? Nobody wants less. But just thinking of Tom Cruise interviewing a vampire. Obviously, it only really this trope is usually only for high school teen movies to a degree. Like I said, could you use them in, say, an adult movie? I'm trying to think of one now, because this is mainly the trope is for high school teen slasher movies.
Yeah.
If we're talking in a horror sense, obviously you got your teen movies to a degree, like you have Clueless, Mean Girls, again breaking down these genres and tropes as well. But they don't have a final girl because they're not horror, and the final girl usually is the virgin. But yeah, I'm trying to think. It's not something that can usually be done with adult films. I say
No.
adult films, I was like porn now, so with not teen films.
Yeah, in an in an older audience is what you're trying to, like an older thing.
And older characters in it. Like if you're talking about a horror film that's not set in a high school, like I can't think of a horror film that's not set in a high school. Like.
No, I'm just like, my mind's like, I'm looking at the DVDs I've got stacked up here, and none of them relate to this right now. I'm like,
Yeah, is this a trope of slasher that it has to be in a high school?
well, this is the thing. The actual, like, if you go in as the rigid of these sort of characters, popularity, things like that, these things don't really translate into an older lifestyle. These are the sorts of things we tend to grow out unless you're talking about it in a sort of reunion-esque kind of situation, where that sort of does come into that. Again, it still revolves around education because it's like bringing it back to those sorts of things. I literally no idea off the top of my head. I'm really trying to think now.
Obviously, there's loads of horror films like supernatural horror, zombie horror, all of
Yeah.
them. Like, loads of them. But thinking of an actual proper slasher film that doesn't take place in a high school, I can't think of one. Because American Psycho, you could class as maybe to a degree as a slasher, but it's more of a psychological thriller. Obviously, you're sporting the American Psycho merch right there.
I am. I even have the DVD in front of me, holding up my my iPad. The thing with it, so when you were talking about it, American Psycho did come into my head because we have it from this perspective of our main like plethora of characters are probably who would have been the jocks and the cheerleaders in school, like if in that environment, because again we're talking in a high business sort of area, and these sorts of films again, I guess would have called sort of you would have the high earners, these people that are really driving business, their wives and girlfriends, jocks and cheerleaders, and then you've probably got the underdog, who's probably going to fall more into that like nerd category. But yeah, because I guess who do you have as like your nerd slash like virgin in American Psycho? Is secretary?
Elizabeth Moss. It's not Elizabeth Moss. It's Chloe Savini, isn't it?
Chloe Savini, yeah, he's secretary. So she is that delicate, bookish kind of character. Not that she's bookish as a person anyway, but this like character compared to the extravagance of the other people in the film is that sort of neutral character. But yeah, that's the only way I can sort of think of it in that sense.
Yeah, but no, I'm saying it right now. A slasher film has to be in a high school. I think that's one of the main tropes of a slasher movie.
If it's not a high school, slasher movie needs to be in some sort of like restricted high school, college.
Like obviously,
Happy Death Day.
the only other one that I'm talking about, sorry, in a school education setting, would be Friday the 13th because that's a summer camp.
True. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else.
Like Halloween technically isn't set in a school, but she is a school student.
They're all like children. They're all high schoolers or younger.
But it doesn't use the typical educational setting of a school to actually do the killings.
Do the killings. I mean, what comes Okay, what about films like You're Next? Does that count as a slasher, or is that counted as like a home invasion film? Can they be the same?
I haven't seen Your Next.
Neither have I. Oh God.
Why you say The Strangers then? I haven't seen that either.
Well, because I wouldn't say that's a slasher. I would say that is a home invasion. That is a suspense home invasion film.
Okay, so I think we're going to this point now where we're going to completely kind of change the episode to a degree and say, what do you count as a slasher movie?
Well, yeah, this is. I think we've spoken about this
That
briefly.
trope, isn't it? Like,
Well, they marry so closely together, the slasher trope and the cheerleader, and because these are the things of like, Scream does it obviously, where you have a character that comes back that you already think's dead, which I think was kind of not very widely done at that
yeah,
time. But then that also kind of like brought in that precedent for other films to do that. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer does something similar, where you think that Jennifer Love Hewitt's the only one left out of everything, but then her friend, who's played by Brandy, turns up like right at the last minute, who also was a character of color and female. So she, the fact that she ended up being like a last character standing as well was quite a breaking as well for the genre. But yeah, we have these sorts of tropes that do kind of go in with slasher. I guess because I mean, if you think about it, like monster films, they don't really care if you're a,
they don't care what you
they
are.
don't care what
They're
you are.
just
They're
going to
just,
step on you or eat you.
yeah.
But it's funny you say that because the most recent film, I you haven't seen it yet, but Freaky,
Mhm,
you've got like the main character played by Catherine Newton, and her best friends are gay and black.
mhm,
And obviously, the premise of Freaky is there's a serial killer played by Vince Vaughn, and he swaps bodies with Catherine Newton.
mhm.
So she is in his body, he's in her body, and obviously Vince Vaughn is there, and basically they're running away from the killer, and the guy saying, "I'm gay, you're black, we're basically screwed." Like literally, like we're gonna die. And like you said, then with I know you did last summer, black woman surviving. I think they even say it in Scream 3 as well. Omar Epps' character was saying basically like, "I'm gonna die first," and that's usually the case, especially in older movies when you're talking 70s, 80s slasher movies. The black character usually died first.
Mm.
So yeah, that's one of the good things I think, especially with newer horror movies and newer slasher movies. Because I know you said that you don't enjoy this trope as much, and we can dive into that a little bit more. Because I think any movie that doesn't really follow these tropes are usually universally recognized to be pretty
Mhm.
good movies. So is it just a case of the trope is dead and it's basically done, or is it just because people just wanted something different?
I think it's that I think it's starting to open it up to a wider audience. If it, like I was saying before, nowadays, we do still have, the popular and the unpopular, but I feel like that sort of conversation around these things is tried to be changed a little bit, where people are a bit more fluid. They don't tend to be boxed into a certain criteria. And especially like we were saying about um essentially if the character is black, then they tend to die first. um Especially with like, creators like Jordan Peele and all that coming around, that is just something that is not happening so like as much in films anymore. And I think that gives you have a wider audience. There's a great documentary on Shudder called Horror Noir, that talks about the history of horror and its relationship with African American actors and characters, because it is widely the sort of Americanized, you know, films, where that trope kind of comes in, because the slasher films, and this cheerleader, jock, virgin, and nerd is very much an Americanized thing. I don't think you'd find it as much in British horror. But it still happens. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened and like isn't happening, but it's sort of newer films and giving a more mixed casting, sort of opening it up to people being actually like, you know, I don't always want to see the same sort of things happening over again, because it comes predictable when you start watching these films, and it's like, oh, this person's gonna die now. Like, I do it now. I sit here and I'll watch films and I'm like, well, they're dead. They've done one thing. They've opened a door they shouldn't have done, and I'm like, well, dead. But then it also builds suspense now where they don't die, and I'm like, well, everything I knew is a lie.
Just when you say about the what you were saying then, so my mind's gone back because I was looking at something quickly. When you talk about British films, and British films don't usually use this trope, can you name any British horror movies that are set in a school, like slasher?
Tormented.
When you think of British movies, you think mainly Shaun of the Dead, or you think of other ones. I don't think there's a lot of slasher movies that actually are actually set in a school.
Tormented. There you go. That was
There you go.
a big film for me back in the day when I was growing up. It's one of those films. I'm pretty sure it was like a Channel 4 film. But yeah, a group of students in a boarding school. It's always, see, this is the thing. It's a boarding school in England. If it's not,
It's not going to be like
if
a
it's not a
public high
school,
school.
yeah, no, it's not going to be. It's not going to be the the high school down the street. It's going to be a public school in the middle of nowhere. But
Because of
yeah,
that newer film as well, Slaughterhouse Rules, the Simon Pegg one. But again, I haven't seen that, so I don't know if that actually. Like I said, I haven't seen Slaughterhouse Rules, so does that follow the tropes?
I haven't either. I've got it on my list. We're really behind. See, we can talk about older stuff. God help us if we have to talk about newer stuff.
Well, we're slowly catching up. You finally watched
We're
that
getting
again
there.
today, at least. But like,
how many years out of date am I on that one? 4.
But you said this tormented thing, because again, it's not one I've seen. And I'm just quickly having a look at it with Alex Pettifer, and
yeah.
So does that follow the trope, especially in Britain?
From what I remember, it's one of those films of it's a revenge film. So people getting their just desserts after being particularly horrible to a character. So I guess it does kind of fall into that trope, because we have our typical characters of the popular boy, the popular. You can't really call them a jock in like these sort of like British things. They're usually just
they play
like
rugby or something.
I think pretty sure one of them plays rugby in it. And then you've got usually it's the popular girl and boyfriend. Oh, where you'd gone? I thought you just left. So it's like popular. Everyone's popular to an extent, or ends up getting pulled along in this sort of torment. I would recommend it. It's good. It's an easy watch. I've lost your audio.
So yeah, like I said, I was having a quick look at it, and the picture looks weird. But yeah, I just thought, I just typed in British teen horror films.
Yep.
And there was only 13 that came up. I don't know if you've seen any of them. Amityville Playhouse, Blood and Chocolate, Bloody New Year, Boy Eats Girl, Don't Hang Up, The Hole, Love Bite, Octane, Slaughterhouse Rules, Sparrow, Tormented, Truthful Dare, and Vampire Academy.
I've only seen one.
They're the only British teen horror films that come up when I type it on Google.
Well, I think this is because
on Wikipedia.
Well, yeah, I think as an aspect of the British horror in general, I think it tends to go a lot more around like you're in a forest, you're in a cabin,
the movie
stuck.
The Forest.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got films like The Ritual, where people are like, maybe you've not all seen each other for a while, so they all go off on this like soul finding journey.
After one of their friends like has been diagnosed with cancer or they're broken up with their
It's all
wife or something.
exactly. Well, the one I was going to say is not. It's not based in a trope sort of sense, but Doghouse with Danny Dyer. It's always Danny Dyer. He had loads of these sorts of films back in the day. I love it. It's a great film. But essentially, it's that their friend gets divorced, so it's like an anti-stag do. I don't know why Jamie's just made
We're
me
not talking
giant.
about Danny Dyer.
Oh, don't! I love Danny Dyer. Like I know I look like I shouldn't love Danny Dyer,
It's
but
the war, Danny Dyer.
I love him so much. I would give anything for Danny Dyer to call me a slag. It'd be great. It would complete my life. But I think he's I think he's great.
Wow.
The Nook House is essentially an anti stag do, so they all go to this little village to celebrate their friend having a divorce. Essentially, obviously he's not so happy about it, but everybody else is.
But that's the thing. So, with the trope, is this only for American films?
Well, now we're talking about it, it must be. I mean, we're only two people talking about this. This might be something where our listeners or followers might want to like comment. We could actually put a poll about it in Instagram after this and just ask people what they think after it's gone live, obviously, not beforehand. Don't want to spoil anything. But it genuinely could be. I think maybe that sort of thing of slashers is a bigger thing out there. I don't know what it is because things like I mean obviously the people that think up of these things are probably British, but could it be to do with what do they call it, like ratings? Sometimes it might be harder to get a rating in Britain than it is in America, though nowadays obviously it's a bit different. It's a bit more stricter across everywhere. But maybe back in the day when these films were getting made, it was more, I guess as well, American cinema has the money. British cinema doesn't quite have that same dollar
No,
bills.
exactly. So, I decided that I would look. I mean, I'm probably not going to name them all, but I typed in British slasher movies, and 47 have come up. And just looking at them, again, none of them seem to be in a
It's
high school. A lot of them probably at Eden Lake. That looks like a forest.
well, it's like yeah.
Freak Dog, Lighthouse, not the Lighthouse with
No,
Robert Pattinson,
it's Stitches on there.
which is on there. Yeah,
I love Stitches. Maybe I'll get you to watch that at some point. It's a great film.
yeah, it's Ross Noble, isn't it, the clown?
Yeah, I do like Ross Noble, to be fair though.
The only one I'll go quickly look on this one, but Prevenge is on there. I know we recently talked about Prevenge.
Revenge. Holly commented about that. Thanks for that, Holly.
And Mum and Dad, is that the? Oh no, I thought that was the Selma Blair one.
I was
That's
gonna
not.
say no. I want to watch that though. I'm pretty sure it's on Shudder.
That's not
Shout
sure.
out to
Yeah,
Shudder there. Not sponsored,
this
but
if you want to.
if you want to.
Um, but I'm just. I mean, they can't Sweeney Todd. Fair enough. But I was want to quickly look on this one because we might have to watch this film because there is a film on here called Slaughter High.
Oh.
It's an international co-production between the United States and UK. So, all right, fair enough. So it's probably set in the UK. But the film stars follow a group of adults responsible for a prank gone wrong on April Fool's Day who are invited to a reunion at their high school where a mass killer waits inside for them. I'm just going to quickly look because, again, reunions don't usually happen within the UK. I don't know if it's just the high school I go to, but
No, I don't. Yep, same here. I mean, even if my high school did try to organise something like that, I would not be going. I don't think I could think of anything worse. I hated high school. No offense to anyone from high school that listens to this. I'm sure you're fine, but high school as a concept, hated it. But
yeah, but it's
yeah, I don't.
filmed in London and Virginia Water, Surrey, so it looks British. So I think this is something that God knows how we'll actually try and find this film because it's limited release in the theaters in 1986. But
So no, we're not finding it then. I mean, it could again. Shout out to Shudder. Could be on Shudder. Sounds like something that they would have.
Yeah, it was originally named. I mean, it was released as April Fool's Day on VHS in Japan, but that's a completely different film. April Fool's Day.
Oh,
I've got
I was
this
gonna
film.
say, I was like, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not called that. It's just retitled Slaughter High, probably because April Fool's Day came out.
Mm.
Just read the tagline for this. Marty majored in cutting classmates.
Oh,
So it's
we like.
definitely that's an Americanized version of a British slash movie, but maybe that's something we're gonna have to explore because I think this trope is only for American teen slasher movies. There isn't a lot of teen British movies because British horror is more. They don't really do slasher
So this is
unless
the
like
thing.
it's in Forest or if it's in.
I think a lot of it as well is that there is cultural differences between a high school experience in the UK and a high school experience in America. Obviously, the age and like like systems are different. So I think in the US they're still in high school as what we would class as like sixth form or college.
Mm.
So these people that we see running around and you're like, oh my god, they're high school students. In reality, they're probably college students. And if you think about our culture, like as college students now, you go out and you're drinking and messing around and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't seem that jarring. But if you think of it in a high school in Britain compared to the sort, they're all being a bit promiscuous and things like that in this US centric way, we would never think of that of our high school students. I mean, it probably happens. We all know. You grow up in Blackpool, you're on the pier drinking cider on bonfire nights in November. But these sorts of things kind of don't like they don't translate, which is probably where it comes that we don't have them in a British sort of sense.
So you've mentioned you don't like the trope, and you've kind of explained why. But every slasher movie has to have a final girl. Whom is your favourite final girl, and why?
Oh, well, that's a
Bring it
mean
out the big
question. I didn't
question.
think of this before we sat down.
Bring it out the
You
questions.
are. Um. um. doo, doo, doo.
Oh.
I do quite like Nancy from obviously like next to her then sort of like Laurie Strode is like my next sort of choice. I'm going classic with those two because I think a final girl resonates as something different in this newer world of cinema. Because in theory, Danny from Midsummer is a final girl, but is she really in the same vein a final girl as these two that I mentioned previously?
Which is weird if she's classed as that because she doesn't really do much.
It is
She just
more
lets
that
them take over her and just survives.
she was the faith.
Basically.
They had plans, and she just did not want to get in the way of them. You know,
Yeah,
because
she
I
was
mean,
just like,
same.
I'll just stay here and just let you do what you want, and then I'll just cry and
Exactly.
let everyone cry with me.
She was out. She was out baking bread. You know.
But this is the thing, because if that's been adapted and you count Danny from Midsummer as a final girl, one of the main characteristics of a final girl would be you fight the killer and you survive. You fight the killer, you overcome him, like you have a fight with him early on in the film and you just barely get away by the skin of your teeth, maybe get a scar or some kind of mark from the killer, and then at the end, because you've lost everything or something, you have the power inside you, believe in yourself, and then you overcome the killer. So that to me is what a final girl is.
But this is what I'm saying. Cinema's changing, and the demographics that the final girl that we look at in that sense might be a bit different if you look at it from that cheerleader jock virgin nerd perspective. The now that cinema's changing and we're not kind of pigeonholing people into those sorts of demographics, being a final girl might actually be something where you are sort of like the last standing from your own like preservation, the need to survive. Um, I'm trying to think of another modern example of a final. Again, I guess Tree is an example of a final girl, but then again, is she a final girl? What's that?
I think she fits more into my criteria of final girl. She has the trouble. She
Well,
eventually
yes,
becomes over the killer.
but in theory, was there any other lives wasted along the way? In theory, with Tree.
Was there any lives wasted? Hers about 200 times.
Well, yeah, true. But was there anyone other than her own life? In theory, depending on how many times she went through it, that was affected.
There wasn't really anyone else.
Because again,
No one else besides obviously her roommate.
well, yeah, but this is the thing. So then it's like, which is, I mean, go watch another episode about Happy Death Day to find out more. But if you think about it in that sense, the two girls that I mentioned, where it was like obviously like Nancy and Laurie, there was collateral damage, which then ended up making them, as returning final girls, they were in a different mental capacity. They had the grief and the weight of the fact that these other people died on them, which makes them stronger but also slightly damaged in that sense. If you think of it in that sort of future longevity, a lot of films aren't making sequels nowadays, so you don't need to build up the final girl to make a comeback.
That's true. I know they haven't obviously done more, but there is apparently supposed to be a Happy Death Day 3 as well as a number 2 as well, which I'm sure you're really excited for.
Well, like you say, the 2 is there, and we spoke about that in the previous one. I feel like 3 might be a little bit overkill. Excuse the pun, but that might literally be a little bit overkill. But these films nowadays, like Midsummer, to go back to it, they're a one-off.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see a film. I mean, some people might, of Danny living in the community.
And I think that's one thing, especially the good horror films now, are these just standalone movies.
Mm-hmm.
But again, all of these films that we talk about that follow these tropes, slasher, high schools, are franchised to a degree. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have really a lot of standalone movies that follow these tropes.
No.
So, is this a dying trope in horror?
I think so. I think the slasher genre in general is probably best fitted towards that period of the like 70s, 80s. I think true slasher, where you've got your big hitters like Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers. Those are like the real slashers. And then I think you with thousands, it's almost like new slasher. It's following the same recipe as the 80s, but it's some cases it's a hit and miss. It's a bit, like it's regurgitating the same things, but sometimes, like the Scream franchise, it hits on something different, which then paves the way for newer films to make those different changes, like Cabin in the Woods, The Babysitter, so on and so forth.
Okay, interesting. So, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want to say. I'm just going to cut you off and say that's basically it for this episode. But is there anything else you want to say about the trope?
No, I'm just, I mean, as much as it is, a tried and tested trope, and it is in the older sort of like works, it's nice to see it revamping and changing for a more modern world, and to have some, a little bit of change, a little bit spice, a little bit spice. Now that I'm not in high school, I'm not really, I don't really want to be watching a bunch of teenagers running around and getting cut up as much in like modern cinema.
Yeah.
What about you?
I love my old slasher movies. So when I think of this trope, I think especially during the conversation that we've had, it's something that's just gone. You don't see it anymore. Like, I think maybe because they try and remake some of the films and stuff like. But again, this we're talking early 2000s, like Prom Night and One Missed Call or whatever it was called. Like all of these like teen slasher movies, but they're all American and horror movies now. I mean, I don't know if you count Candyman as a slasher.
It gets
But
put into that category. I think it can. I mean, there's a lot of slashing
there's
going
a
down.
lot of slashing. But yeah, there's not a lot of movies that really follow this trope. I know Freaky does play with the trope a little bit. Set in a high school American, you have these tropes, but they play a lot with the whole virgin nerd and thingy trope. And I really enjoy Freaky. Like it's a really fun film. So I really recommend Freaky, and that is why it is my film to watch in 2 weeks' time.
Ah, fantastic. Okay, I'll need to try and find somewhere to watch then, because I'll need to buy.
Actually, I just need to double check to make sure it's out for you to buy. I just read to realise because it is quite a new film. I'm not actually sure if it is available within the UK as of yet to buy. I know it's available in America. It's available on HBO Max for any of our international listeners. It's available on there, but within the UK, the film Freaky. It only came out in a cinema not so long ago, didn't it? So I might have to retract Freaky because Freaky is due to be released on the 4th of October 2021 on DVD. So might not be able to do Freaky.
We'll just rent it on Amazon.
No, it's thingy. It's still shown in cinemas.
Yeah, but it had a dual release.
Did it?
I'm pretty sure it comes up on my Amazon. I don't know whether it's showing me via like Now TV or something, but it comes up as an option.
Oh yeah, it is available. Yes, because of the new Sky Premiere thing, isn't it? Yeah, you can rent it on there. So if we're gonna do Freaky, let's bring something brand new, really, a brand new movie. I mean, I'm bringing all these new ones in now, aren't I? And then you can decide what we're gonna do next. So next week, join us for our most recent release of the 2020 movie, directed by the director of Happy Death Day.
Can you see a reoccurring thing coming through with Jamie's options, guys?
Who doesn't love a bit of Christopher Landon? No, I just thought let's just do it because we always complain we don't watch enough recent horror films.
We do. And the thing is, I see the trailer and I want to watch it, and then I just never get around to it. And then it's like with Happy Death Day, it's like 5 years later, and then I finally watch it.
And hopefully you will enjoy it.
I'm sure.
So, Freaky will be our episode in 2 weeks' time. It gives me a chance to rewatch it as well because I absolutely adored it when I watched it last year when it got released in the US of A. So, Freaky in 2 weeks' time. But in the meantime, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook at the Bloody Brilliant Podcast. I said the at Bloody Brilliant Podcast. It's not at the, it's just at Bloody Brilliant Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and wherever you are listening or watching on YouTube and Spotify, press that follow button so you never miss an episode. And follow us on Instagram. Emma does a lot of great stuff on Instagram as well. You can check our schedule. I'm sure that's going to be updated soon, probably tomorrow, just so you don't get a spoiler about 2 weeks' time. So, yes, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.